Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. Now we are adding another plugin to our plugin based framework here, thunderPHP. So the reason we want to add categories is so we can match, we can connect posts to pages, because right now we have pages like this, the About Us page and the Contact Us page. However, we want a way to add dynamic posts, because these pages are static. This is static information here. So what we really want is to have dynamic posts here, just like you would have with WordPress. So we want to be able to go to our admin section, add a new post, and then have it show up on the appropriate page. All right, so to do that, let's make sure we log in. Let me just make sure I log out here and log in properly. Oops, password. All right, so now I can go to my admin section, and as you can see in the admin section, we don't have the categories line over here. So let's quickly deal with that. Now, because we already have plugins that have a similar format, like for example the same one for pages, we can easily convert that to a categories plugin. So to do that, let's just do a quick copy and paste, right? So let me get over to let's see here, let me go to the basic pages, this one right here. Now we don't need a lot of stuff that is in here, so or maybe we could, anyway, it's up to you which one of these plugins you think is closer to the one that you want to deal with. Maybe I think let's try the users manager instead, right? So I'm going to copy this one. So let me open the folder that contains this guy on the outside, actually, users manager, and let me copy that and paste. So it's going to make a copy of it, and I will change this to, let's just call it basic, instead of basic categories, maybe just categories for once. Let's do that, right? Categories. So great, awesomeness. Now that we have that, we can go to that folder we've just created and edit some stuff in there. So let's start with the config.json file. So here I'm going to edit that to categories, and same ID here, categories. Let's go ahead and dependency. It doesn't depend on this one. It could depend on basic admin, for example. You can add dependencies as you wish. So the routes where this is on the admin section, right? So we can add categories there. So that is cool. And okay, cool. Now one more thing, let me go to core. I just want to confirm that we added a function called class path anywhere in here. We didn't. Okay. All right, so I may want to add that. So there will be times when, it depends on what you're doing. There will be times when you are in one plugin, but you want to instantiate a class from a different plugin, though you have to limit the number of times you do that, but sometimes it saves you a lot of coding. So the reason you have to limit it is because we want to make these plugins as independent as possible so that one plugin can work without the other. But as you can see, even from the config file, we do need some dependencies sometimes. So when a situation where one plugin has a dependency on another plugin, it would make sense maybe to use a class from a different plugin. So we will create that function. Let me actually put it at the end before I forget about this. So we go to this is in the functions.php file in the app core. So this one we're going to call it class path, and we'll need two things here. First of all, maybe the folder that the class will be in, and then the class name itself, like that. So all this will do is just return a path that we can use to include the class. So here we're just going to say return, and then we'll say the folder. And then let's put a slash there from folder name. And then now we know that this is supposed to be inside plugins, so we will do plugins like that, slash, and then we connect folder, and then after folder here we connect the class name like that. Okay, and then we know the class will have a .php value at the end. All right, so this function just returns the path to a particular class that we want, and then all we need to do is include it manually and then instantiate it. So let's plugin slash the folder, which is plugin slash the folder, for example, and then class name, etc. So like I said, we will limit the use of this function because this function can be unpredictable. If somebody changes the folder path, for example, of their plugin, normally when you change the folder path of your plugin, it shouldn't affect anything about your plugin. It should still work even when you change the folder name. But if there are places where you used this function, then things will be different, because then your folder name will no longer match what is written here. That's why use of this function should be as limited as possible. All right, let's remove that, keep that under advisement there. All right, so we've edited, let me close this. We've edited inside categories the config file. Now let's go ahead and edit more stuff. So with what we have here, I think we're ready to go. Let's go to the plugin.php here. Let's change every reference to users manager. Let's say categories to manage categories, right? So we'll have everything here that says users. Let me just select all instances of this. I'm just holding down Control and pressing D, and wherever it says users, I can pretty much change that to categories like that. Okay, so we have that out of the way. Great. So route, plugin route itself, the admin route, and then the categories table will be called categories. There will be optional tables. We don't need any of these optional tables, except, actually we don't. So I'm just gonna leave this one empty in case we want optional tables later. We can add more here. Check if all tables exist. So you're gonna check every table here that is named, if it exists or not. That's cool. So here, we don't need this all permissions here at all. That's only for the users manager. And here it says add user, view category details, maybe. Okay, so let me select every instance of user, because on singular, though the user can here should not be part of this, but I'm just going to edit that as well and change it later. So I'll change that to category like that. I'm just trying to speed along the changes here, but on this one, category can is not, excuse me, is not a valid function. So let's change that back to user can. Okay, cool. So the title here should be categories. This is the link in the admin section, right? Now I'm looking for a font awesome icon that would match categories, I guess. So there's a missing table there, so maybe we should sort that out. And meanwhile, yeah, so I want to open font awesome in the meantime here. Okay, so it wants to. All right, so since it's talking about the table, let's check out migration files. Now, there are no migration files in here. Apparently, oh, in the users manager, yes, there were no migration files. So what we're going to do instead is create some. So I'm going to open the folder. Let's say open folder, our main folder. Let me remove this zip file that was for the source code. So let me type cmd here. So it opens our command prompt with that exact path. So I'm going to type PHP thunder and say make, because we're making something. We're making a migration file. And in what folder are we doing that? It's called categories. And what are we calling the migration file? This one is the categories. Yeah, that's the categories table, right? Yeah, let's try that. So migration file created, that's cool. Let's check that out. So inside categories now in the migration folder, we have that file code with the categories class. Okay, that's good. So now what we do is, let me remove all of this stuff that I don't need. Okay, so let's think about categories. What we really need is the category ID and the category name. Those are the only two things we need. Now, in order to match a category to a particular page or a category to a particular post, we'll need a separate table that's going to be called the maybe categories page mapping or categories post mapping. So it's better those particular tables are inside either the basic pages plugin or the basic posts plugin that we'll create later. So in here, we just create this one table, and I'll just call this part category, and the category name will have that to deal with. And sometimes you may need a slug for your categories. So I'm just going to duplicate that and put slug. And let's put that at 100. Oopsie daisy. Like that. Oopsie. I'm trying to double click here and it doesn't seem to be working. All right, so we don't need to know when the category is created, deleted, and such, but you could leave these if that's information that's relevant to you. However, the deleted or disabled, let's change deleted to disabled. Makes more sense. And let's remove this other column. Now, the slug is a unique text that will go with the category. It's like an ID, but in text format. Now, the reason we need a slug is because, let's say, for example, let me just use a new page here, for example. Now, imagine you have a website. So, website.com, like this. And then let's say you have a category called clothes, for example. So what would happen if you don't have a slug is that if somebody clicks on that category, it has an ID, right? Now for the website to know what category you clicked, the URL may look something like this: website.com/category, and then /. Maybe that category has an ID of 10, okay? So when you open this, it may actually show you items that are in this category, category 10, right? The only problem is category 10 is non-descriptive. It doesn't mean anything really, it's just a number here. So if people are searching for category 10 a lot on your website, this one will be indexed by Google. Now imagine this is a clothes category, right? And now somebody is searching for clothes, and Google will go through your URLs and say, this one has no clothes in it at all, because there's no way Google would know that category 10 on your website is for clothes. However, if your category had a slug, the URL will look something like this instead. Why do I type clothes like that? Okay, so it's gonna look something like this instead of that. So as you can see clearly, next time Google is searching through your website, it will say, okay, I think this category is talking about clothes, as opposed to this one. Even though these URLs would lead you exactly to the same page, this one is 100 times better for search engine optimization, because just by looking at the URL, somebody can tell this is what I'm looking for. So this is why we need a slug as well. So this part here is the slug, the unique text ID. So let me close that. All right, so there we go. Let me go and remove these keys here. So ID primary key disabled there, great. And we'll of course need to have the slug indexed as well. Now, if you're going to be searching category names, then you might as well index that too. So let's put that here. And then that's the table name there, and we are done. This is for when we are dropping the table, and that's all the migration we need. And all we need now is just to run this migration file. And we can do that by going back to our, what's this? Our terminal here and copying the actual file name here. So I'm going to copy that. And what I want to do here is say PHP thunder, which is the file. And what command do I want to do? I want to migrate. What folder? That's the categories folder. And what's the file I'm trying to migrate? That's the file right there, and press enter. And as you can see, it says table categories created successfully. That is awesome. Which means now we can get rid of this error because that table now exists. And as you can see, now we have categories there. Excusez-moi. Let me try and search for category here. Maybe this list item here. Don't I already have that? Maybe not. Let's see layer group. I kind of like this one instead. So let's use that. If I go to my plugin.php, there's that part which describes the let's go back here. It says layer group. Let's see how that looks. Aha, that's much better. I like that instead. Okay, so now if I click on categories, this is what I get, right? Categories here, page 1. But this list does not describe what my categories may contain. Okay, so let's go ahead and fix that. So I'm going to start by going to the, since we can close this migration part, let me go to views. Now inside view, now on categories, we're going to have a front-end view at some point. So you may want to put folders here like front-end and back-end and stuff. But for now, let's just leave it as it is. So I'll start with the list, okay? The list here. In fact, let me do that right now. Let me just go to views, right click and say new folder. I'm going to say front end. This one will be empty for now. And I'm going to create a new folder and say admin. So the other one is the back end, which is the admin. And let me go ahead, open that folder and move my files. All these files, list, view, blah, 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 they're all for the backend, which is the admin. So I'll move them in there. Great. So now I need to close that file because it doesn't exist anymore. Let me go in the admin part and say list. Now I need to change your references to these files, of course. So I'm going to do that right here in the plugin. .php. So there's references to view files down here. So from here and there and there and there, we need to add admin slash like so. And just like that, even here, admin slash, and we are good to go, I guess. Great, that solves that problem. So let's go back to the list view. So page, that's all good. We just need to change what we are seeing here. So for example, category name, and then here we'll say slug, right? What else? We need to know whether it's active or not. And that's about it. So the rest we remove. All right. Now I want to change everywhere it says add user or add something. So underscore user here should all change to underscore category. Add category. Let me just confirm that these are the right permissions we are changing here. Yes. Yes, that looks about right. So great. Now there are some with categories. View categories. So let me find everyone that has this, and this is the only one. So because categories is special, when it's plural, the spelling is different. Okay, just make sure what you put here is exactly what's in these there, and that should do the trick. Okay, so looking at everything else, now I've changed the headers. So I need to change what's down here as well. So instead of first name here, for example, this one should be category. And yep, that will do the trick. We don't need first name and last name, so I'm going to remove the second one here. Boom. Let me remove this image as well. Let me use this gender one for the slug. Right. Let me remove this UC first because we don't need that. And then let me remove rows, date updated and stuff. And here we have buttons, but then we need the active part here, whether disabled or not. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say, let me remove this and say slug disabled. If it's disabled, then it's not active. So which means we will either echo yes or no. Let me do it that way. So just a question mark here makes this an if statement. So I'm just saying if this is true, let's echo what's here. And if it's false, let's echo what's there. So if it's false, if disabled, which means it's not active. So active means no. If it's not, we put yes. Alrighty, this is cool now. So let me refresh. Let's see what we got. And there we go. So category name, standard class, category. Okay, so the reason there's these errors here is because we're not actually loading the categories. We're loading users because that's what our plugin is connecting to. So let's see here. So let's go down to not the controller, but the basic admin main content. And let's look at the listing area, which is down here. All right, so what are we doing here? We're saying select all from categories where, now, this is for when we search, but here we're just getting all. So, so let me just change first name to category. Like find. We don't need an or because there's only one column we'll be searching in, so that should do the trick. Actually, this should work just fine. So I'm wondering, because there's nothing in categories, it should just show there are no records, right? So what is happening? So what I want to do is go to list here and let me just see what's inside rows. So I can do that, let me zoom in, by doing dd over here and rows, something like this. And let's see what we get. Okay, so there's something in here and there's a user. So it's still getting users. And why is it doing that? Even though, let me go back here. Even though we are reading from the categories table and saying get all. Now the reason is because the categories class is pointing to the users table. So we can fix that by going to models, and here we have user. We need to change that. Instead of user.php, this should change to category singular. Let me rename that and say category. Actually, you know what? Let's just delete. We're going to delete these, but not for now, not just yet. What I'll do is let me just make a model here directly. So still in our command line, I'll say PHP thunder and say make model, and in the categories folder, I'm going to call this one category singular, enter, and there it is. So the file has been created. Now if you watch the user.php, it has the users table there listed. So instead of categories like this, let me find all references to that. Okay, that's the only one. Let's change it like so. So that's the table, that's the primary key. Category, that's fine. The namespace is correct. And so let's put all the columns names we need. We need that ID. We don't need date created. So category, right? Let's duplicate a few times. This one is disabled and this one is slug. So let me copy that. Now the slug never changes, and the ID. So let's remove ID from any updates and slug. So those two can be edited, that's fine. The rest of this is validation. Now we're going to dive deep into this one, but for now, let's see, maybe I can just change email to category, right? Let's do that. Like that, maybe that should suffice. And then instead of email, let's change that to category. The category is already in use, blah blah blah. Category is not valid. We can't really tell what is a valid category name here, so I don't think we need this unless you want to limit the category entry to specific things, but no, I think we don't need that part. Let me remove that, just like we don't need that filter here. Alrighty then, this looks about right. And now let's change references. Wherever we're instantiating the user class in the plugin.php, let's instantiate the categories class instead. Okay, so I'm going to copy this. I want to find all instances of this. There are only 2 of them. So instead of user, here, let's change that to category. Now there are these. I'll leave these for now, but let's just deal with one thing at a time. I'll refresh. Okay, so users manager category is not found. That is true. There's no users manager category like that. So let me find all instances of that. Let's change the namespaces categories, as you can see there. Yep, cool. So this should work now. Let me refresh, and there it is. So it shows no records, but when I click add, this is what I get. So we need to fix this in the next video, where we can actually add a category, then edit and delete. Alright guys, I hope you had fun, and I'll see you in the next video.